The SCL 500 has been coming along so nice lately, and if you've been keeping up with the build at all, you know that most of the mods that we've done have been the best kinds of mods. Cheap and easy. And knowing how much I love my cheap and easy mods, it's left a lot of you guys questioning why I haven't done one of the most common cheap and easy mods, the levers. But the issue is that the bike is so new that at the time of filming this, there aren't any levers specifically available for the SCL 500 or CL 500, depending on where you live, whether you're looking for a clutch or a brake lever. Until now, I hope. I did some research and I think I've found some levers that will work perfectly and only cost about 20 bucks. Welcome back to Life of Birch. I'm Birch. Subscribe if you're new here and we'll jump straight into it. First, a quick explanation of how I figured out that these should work perfect. So like I said, as far as I know, so far there are no levers available specifically for the CL 500, but I just knew that they had to go because they're so out of place now that I blacked everything out. So I went on Partzilla and checked out the parts numbers to see if they lined up with anything else. I assume that they would probably line up with the CB500X since they share so many parts, or maybe the Rebel because they share so many parts. And the first thing that I checked was the clutch lever. And wouldn't you know it, the clutch lever is the exact same as, I think it was the 2019 Plus CB500X, CBR500R, and CB500F. So I was like, boom, I was right. Let's check the brake lever, and I'm sure that's the exact same thing, so we can just get some CB500X levers. And that's where things got confusing. The brake lever actually didn't match to any of those. Instead, it matched to the Grom, Monkey, Super Cub, and I think like one of the 300 series CBs. So I was like, okay, that kind of sucks. I guess I'll have to piece together some sort of a kit, like buy levers for a Grom and buy levers for a CB500X and use one of each side. But I'm like, man, that's gonna cost too much money. I don't wanna do it. And I went, wait a second, let me check the front brake master cylinder to see what that matches up to. And that did also match up to the 2019 Plus 500 line of CBs. So I was like, great, I'll just find some CB500F or CB500X levers, because even though the lever doesn't match up for the part number, that does. So it's probably just something where it's not the same part number because they're a different color or something, but the same base. And when I went to look up the levers, as it turns out, the Groms and the CB500 line all share the same levers anyway. And that's when I was like 99.999% sure that it would work. And now we're about to find out. So these are the levers that I went with. Like I said, they're just some Amazon no-name $20 levers that are designed for the Grom and the CB500 line. I'll link these in the description so that if it does work out, you can grab some for yourself. But of course, if it does work out, it's also safe to say that all Grom and CB500 levers will work the same. Now I got these for two reasons. First of all, because they are fully blacked out. You can see even the adjustment lever here is black. Most of them are usually red, but I wanted all black, so I was really stoked to see that these came in all black. And of course the price. Like I said, these were like 20 bucks, and typically even the no-name ones are like 35, 40. So to see that these were 20 bucks, I was stoked. So far it seems like all systems are go, because you can see that on the stock lever it has this little tab here that triggers the brake light switch, and of course on this lever it has that as well, so it seems like it's right, I hope. And it's hard to see, but it looks like the clutch side has the same exact design as well, so we should be in the clear. Now the brake side should theoretically be the easiest, so we'll start on this side, and first things first, you just got to get a 10 mil and break this bottom nut free. Take that off, break the top nut free, and spin that out as well. Looks like the throttle cable's a bit in the way, so you can just kind of rotate that up and out of the way, and then with that out, the lever just slides right out. So like I said, the designs are super similar. However, I am noticing that this little foot thing right here does seem a bit smaller, so hopefully it still is able to trigger the switch. And then you can also see that with the mounting points lined up, this lever is slightly shorter, not crazy shorter though, and it looks like it sits a little bit closer to the bars as is, but it's at the closest level, so you can still click it out to get the reach exactly where you want it. All right, moment of truth. First, let's just put it in place to make sure that it seems like it's going to do what we want. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it should work, and you can probably see, hopefully see, that it doesn't come down quite as far, so it doesn't cover the entire switch button right there, but it does still hit it, which is really all we need, I guess. Also, it's super important to make sure that everything's all nice and greased up. Honestly, it looks like there's enough grease packed in here from stock that we won't have to grease any up on here, because you can see it's already rubbing off on it. So just go ahead and screw everything back together and see if it works. All right, so before we put that bottom bolt on, let's see if the switch works and see how it feels. Okay, so you can see that it's super close to the bar because it's at 1, which is the closest setting for people with freaking baby hands, apparently, because that is like really close. So I'll probably like mine set out to 5 or 6, the longest setting. And yeah, 5 seems like it should be good. I might adjust it out to 6. And now that we have the lever set where we want it, we'll turn the bike on and make sure the brake light isn't already activated. It is not, that's just the running light. And then we'll hit the brake and make sure that it lights up the brake light. Let's go. And now that we know that this side works, we put the bottom bolt on and tightened everything down, made sure that there's no binding, and now we can celebrate how freaking good this looks and move on to the clutch side. So on the clutch side, there's obviously a little bit more to worry about than on the brake side because we have the clutch cable that we have to worry about getting out. So the first thing we're gonna do is loosen up this to give us as much slack on the line as possible. And that part's super simple. You'll just take pliers and hold this piece in place, get some bigger pliers and take that piece and rotate it towards the back of the bike. Ooh, and bump the tripod. Then loosen it all the way and then turn the whole thing in as far as it'll go to give us as much slack as possible. Then same deal as the brake side. You got a 10mm nut that you got to loosen on the bottom and take off. Then you got the flat head on the top that you take all the way out. Now with the lever all free, we're gonna see if we can finesse this cable out without having to loosen it anymore at the engine side. So we'll kind of pull the lever out and then we'll turn it so that the cable lines up with the other slot and then kind of twist it out like that. So to show it better, this is the top of the lever, this is the bottom, and usually the cable runs right through there. So what we did is we turned it so that the cable could come out through this slot. And then we'll do the opposite of that to get the new one on. All right, so essentially we'll take that little knob thing and pull it out like that as best as we can. Then we'll take the channel on the new lever and stick it in and then kind of rotate it into the track the same way we did before. Boom! Then we'll put the top bolt through and tighten that down with our flathead. Actually, I lied. I'm realizing that this one didn't have any grease on it the way that the brake lever did, so I grabbed some white lithium grease spray, put some on the end of a rag there, and then I'll just kind of dab some right there to help keep it all nice and greased up. And now we'll drop that in and tighten it down with our flathead. And I'm sure you know the drill by now. We're gonna tighten down the bottom bolt with our 10mm. All right, and everything's tightened down, but hopefully you can see there's a little bit more free play than we'd like in the lever, so we'll have to adjust it using this. Now, Honda's spec is that when you're moving the lever before it kind of grabs like that, from the point that the end of the lever starts until it stops, it should be about 10 to 20 millimeters of travel, but that'll obviously be a little bit different for this because it's a shorter lever at a different angle. So typically, as a rule of thumb, before it kind of catches like that, you'll just want enough space that a quarter could fit right in there, like thin wise, not wide wise. So yeah, we'll tighten that up by threading this counterclockwise out, and then once we get the amount of slack that we want, we'll tighten this back down to lock it in place. Okay, so now that we have the cable slack set to spec, it is time for another adjustment, which is how far this lever sticks out from the bars, which is the same as what we did on this side, but this actually has a little bit more going on. And what I mean by that is that on the clutch side, we're not just determining how far away from the bars the lever sits, we're also going to want to make sure that the friction zone is where we want it. So I'm starting mine out at 5 out of 6 because that's how I have it set over here, although it does seem like this lever might be a little bit further away than this one is at the same setting. But regardless, what we're going to do is start the bike up. We're going to pull the clutch in like we normally would, and of course I have my gloves on because that's what I use when I'm riding. And when I use my clutch, I only use 2 fingers. I don't use all 4. So we'll want to make sure that the friction zone is set up properly to where I don't have to pull it all the way to the bar for the clutch to be fully disengaged or whatever. We'll want it to where it does that just by me bringing it in that far and kind of having the lever hit my other 2 fingers, if that makes sense. So to test it out, we'll pull the clutch in and try to put it in gear. Boom, everything felt normal, and then we'll slowly let it out to see where it engages. Well, first of all, we'll make sure that right now it's not trying to lurch forward as if it's like right in the friction zone, and it's not, so that's good. And then we'll slowly let it out, and it starts moving forward right there. So our friction zone is out there. Hopefully you guys can see it. So the way that I use my lever at this setting, we have like an inch and a half before the friction zone starts grabbing. And that's actually a little bit far out for what I like. I'll set it to 4. So again, start letting it out, and it's grabbing right there. So slightly sooner than it did in 5, and I think I'm gonna like this setting a little bit more. All right, so it would appear that we are good to go. It would appear that I was right and that the brake lever and clutch levers both work for the CL500. But there is still one final test. We want to go for a quick little ride to make sure that the friction zone is indeed where we want it when we're riding, and make sure that the front brake is good to go. When putting a new brake lever on, it's really important to make sure that that little piece right there is not depressing that brake pump or whatever it's called, even the slightest, because if it's slightly depressing it like that, there's a chance that along your ride, because the caliper is grabbing the rotor ever so slightly, that friction will cause the brake fluid to heat up and end up locking up your front brake. It doesn't seem like that'll be the case here. Obviously, it's not applying any any pressure to it, but definitely double check before you go for a ride. And on your first ride, make sure to be as careful as possible. So we'll go for a quick ride, make sure that we have everything set how we want, and if it works out, then we have cracked the case.
One
as careful as possible test ride
later.
Okay, now after a successful test ride, we can officially say we have cracked the code, boys. Everything worked out perfect. We officially figured out which levers will work on the CL500, and I could not be more stoked. Only thing I will point out that was a little bit interesting is, like I said, I started out over here on a 5 because it's the same thing that I had over here, but on the ride I ended up working out that I needed to be all the way down at a 2 in order for the friction zone to be where I wanted it to be, which is essentially in line with stock. I never had a problem with where the friction zone was from stock. But with that said, it is a little bit weird how 5 out of 6 on this side is that close, and then 2 out of 6 on this side is like further away than this is. But like I said, all the other levers for the Groms and the certain year CB500 series, I think I said 19 plus, all of those were works, so it might just be these levers that don't necessarily bring that side closer, and you might have better luck with others. But I'm not so sure, because even these are the nicer MZS ones. I say nicer, it's the same exact design, just a different name on it. These cost, I think, $40 from Amazon, whereas these are $20, and I'm pretty sure that if you line them up, they're the exact same thing, probably made in the exact same factory. Yeah, it's hard to tell, but the number 2 setting on these might be slightly closer to the bars than on these, but I'm willing to bet it's the exact same design. I actually forgot that I had ordered these for my Grom. That's not my Grom. My Grom's at the storage unit, but I forgot that I had ordered these for my Grom, only to find out that it wasn't exactly the same gold color, so I ended up not using them. So what do you guys think? Does it match the orange well enough for like a little gold pop? Do we stick with the black, or do we go with the gold for a little pop of color? I did have the gold levers on my orange Rebel 500, the first one, but I think those levers were less of an orangey gold, more of like a goldy gold, you know? Anyway, we cracked the code. We found levers that work for the SCL 500/CL 500, and I could not be more stoked. Stay tuned for more install videos. The next one that we're going to be doing is the long-awaited fender delete video. Shout out to the Patreon members for making all of this possible. As always, I could not be doing this without y'all. I would be broke and living in a cardboard box, and you guys wouldn't have these cool motorcycle videos, so thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to support the channel through Patreon as well, check out patreon.com/lifeofbirch, which I will link in the description. Other than that, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Love you guys. Peace.
Oh, so basic. Hope you play this. Damn, I prayed it. Nice song, and I became this. Old souls fake it. Paid those placements. Fuck shit. And I'm still waiting on the brighter days. Been a minute, been rough many times more. And I'm kicking rocks to a sky of gray. Praying hard, talk to me before I'm done for.